Hey everybody, welcome to this video. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a beautiful succulent plant like this. I'll walk you through all the steps starting from the modeling, shading, lighting, and rendering. This video might be a bit longer, but I have packed so much information into this single video. So yeah, let's get into it. Go to the front view, press Shift A, go to Image, Reference. Okay, let's grab in the front view, and I'm just going to rotate this and place this down. Now let's press Shift A once again, go to Image, Reference. Let's bring in the side view, and I'm just going to rotate this and place this in the X-axis like this. Okay, let's add a plane. Tab into Edit Mode. Let's add a look at it in the middle. Press V to rip out this, and let's select this half and delete these vertices, and let's add a mirror modifier. Enable clipping. Okay, let's start to trace out the shape. Okay, this should be good. Now let's go to the side profile by pressing 3. Okay, let's grab this whole thing and bring this up, and we could use the proportional editing for this one. Okay, something like this. Okay, let's grab this whole thing and bring this down. Okay, make sure that you are selecting the vertices in the X-ray mode, otherwise you might leave out some of the other vertices. Okay, don't worry about these other portions. So we will be creating that after applying a solidify modifier. So for now, just trace out the overall shape here. Okay, now we need to create a little bit of a concave shape in the center. So for that, I would like to grab all these that are in the center. Let's turn off the proportional editing, and let's bring this down. So somewhere around here should be good. Now let's grab all these vertices and slide them in and bring them down as well. Maybe this is a little too much, so I'm just gonna grab these and pull this in. Okay, I'm gonna trace out the overall silhouette of this area. Okay, we need to even out the geometry here. So let's grab this, slide this out. Okay, I guess this is all right. Okay, let's add a subdivision surface modifier and see how this looks. Increase the levels we put to 2 and shade smooth. I guess we pretty much nailed the shape, I think. So it's time for a solidify modifier. So let's also add that and move this above the subdivision and check even thickness, and let's increase the thickness value. Okay, don't worry much about not perfectly matching the reference. We will come to that. So I'm just checking the overall proportion of the leaflet. Okay, this is good. So I'm just going to make a copy of this just in case and move this inside the backup collection, because I'm going to apply the mirror and solidify modifier. Okay, now the middle portion seems a bit flat, so I'm just gonna grab this edge and bring this down, and let's also grab this one and bring this down as well. Now switching to the top view, I'm just going to grab these two faces and let's press Alt E and extrude them along the normals, and let's scale them down in the X-axis to make this a little bit more pointier. Now let's gradually decrease the thickness of this leaf as it approaches the tip, and we can do that by, let's say, let's select this face and Control Shift and select here. Let's Control Shift and select here to select all the bottom faces. So let's just get rid of the unnecessary faces. Okay, now go to the vertex mode. Let's make this as an active vertex and switch the transform pivot to active element, and I'm going to rotate this using this as a pivot, and therefore we can gradually decrease the thickness as it approaches the tip. So let's slide this down a little. Okay, let's grab this whole thing and let's bring this down a little bit, and maybe even scale this down. Okay, this looks a lot better. So I would like to scale out just the edges of this area. So as you can see in the reference image, it's kind of a little bit of a inflated in this area. So let's grab these three edges and let's grab these three as well. So these are the middle ones, and press Alt S to inflate. Okay, you can also turn on the proportional editing to help with the scaling. Scroll out a little bit. Okay, something like this should be good. Now maybe we could inflate this one as well a little bit. Yeah, I think maybe we should make this a little bit more pointier. So let's grab this whole thing and scale this down. Maybe just the tip like this. Let's bring this down and let's try to rotate this a little bit to give a little bit of an angle here. Okay, I guess this is all right. I guess the mesh is pretty stretched here, but it's not going to be a problem because we will be using a procedural material for this one. So yeah, maybe we could add a little bit of a curvature down here. Yeah, something like this. Now let's grab both of these guys and move this inside the empty collection. Okay guys, now that we have created the leaflet, let's place the origin of this object over here using the 3D cursor so that it will be easier for us to manipulate it. Let's create the stem now. I'm going to move this over here. Shift C to reset the 3D cursor, and let's add a cylinder for this one. Okay, 30 vertices is fine. Let's grab the top face and scale this down. Maybe a little something like this should be good. Okay, let's move this down as well. Maybe we could scale this down a little bit. Okay, this should be good. Now let's add a subdivision surface modifier onto this ×2, and let's grab the bottom and the top face and let's give it a nice and big bevel like this, and we could create a bevel here. Right click and shade smooth. Don't worry about this pinching. Now we could grab this and let's create a bevel like this. Okay, nice. So this is going to be the largest leaf in this arrangement. So yeah, now let's slightly rotate this like this. Okay, maybe we could increase the base thickness a little bit. Let's grab this whole thing and move this up a little. Okay, this is nice. Now I'm just going to move this over here. Okay, cool. Now the base set of leaves is going to have 6 leaflets. Let's use the 3D cursor as the pivot point for this one, and let's rotate this like this. Again, Shift D, R, Shift R a couple of times. So I'm just gonna adjust this manually. Okay, now let's create the next set of leaves, and for this I would like to have 5 leaflets. So press Shift D and Z, move it out, and let's give it a little bit of a rotation like this. And I'm going to manually rotate these to fill out the space. Something like this should be good. Okay, so I'm going to create a couple more set of leaflets with 5 counts, but a little bit of a rotation is required. So I'm going to rotate these guys in the local x-axis by pressing RX twice. Okay, now press Shift D and let's rotate this like this and give a little bit of a rotation in the x-axis and scale these down. Okay, now press Shift D once more, rotate this, bring it up, and rotate this in the local x-axis once again. Let's bring this down a little bit. Okay, we are getting a nice height hierarchy here. Okay, now let's deselect one of these, press Shift D, and bring this up a little bit. And I'm just going to manually place these. Okay, let's scale this down. Now press Shift D and let's rotate this and bring this up. A little bit rotation in the X values and scale this down a little bit more. And okay, 2 sets of 4s is completed, and maybe we could slightly rotate this back in the x-axis. Okay, now let's deselect one of these and Shift D and R. Let's rotate this and bring this up, scale this down. I'm going to manually place this over here. Let's place this one over here. Maybe we could bring this up a little bit. Before moving on to the final one, I would like to scale these in the y-axis a little bit. So use the local axes as it requires. Okay. Maybe we could edit these guys manually. So I'm going to scale this out in the local x-axis, and I'm going to grab just these and these as well, and I'm going to slightly bring this out a little bit like this, because as it progresses to the top, these leaflets tend to cover the bud that is in the topmost in the hierarchy. So I'm just trying to create that type of effect here. So let's move this out. Let's also grab that tip and move this out as well. Maybe we could add a proportional editing to this. Okay, something like this should be good. Let's grab these two, and I'm going to link the object data for this. Okay, cool. I guess we could go one more set of 3s. So press Shift D R to rotate and scale it down a little bit and move this up. Let's also rotate them inside local x-axis. And as for the final, let's finish it with the 2. So I'm gonna grab these two and Shift D. Let's rotate this manually and scale this down and bring this up like this. So I would like to wrap around these in this angle. So switch back to 3D cursor. Let's move this out. Let's rotate this and move this out as well. So I don't want these two leaflets to getting covered by any one of these single leaf. I want to place it in a average position for all these 3. So yeah, I guess this is looking great. Maybe we could let's decrease the height hierarchy a little bit. It seems like it has a little bit too much. So let's grab each set of leaflets and let's decrease the space a little bit. Let's grab these set of leaves and move them up as well. Let's grab these one and move them up as well. Okay, one final time. Okay, I guess this is looking a lot cooler now. Maybe we could add a little bit of a X rotation for these guys as well. Okay, I guess this is looking a lot more nicer than the previous ones. So yeah, let's decrease this. I guess we need to create a port for this one. So let's add a cylinder and bring this down. Enter the edit mode, scale it out using Shift Z. And I'm going to bring this down and I'm going to give it a nice and big bevel like this. And scale it out a little bit. Okay, now let's add a bevel modifier for this one. Increase the segment to 2 and let's set the profile to something like 0.8. Now subdivision surface modifier, right click shade smooth. Let's increase the bevel angle to something like 89. Okay, that's too much. So 75. Okay, that is good. But I still like these to be a little bit more flatter. Or maybe we could give it, I'm just gonna give it a nice and tight bevel like this. Set that shape to 1. Let's create an insert to avoid the pinching. I guess this is looking nice. Maybe we need to move this up a little bit. Okay, I think I totally forgot to add the hole inside. So let's do that. Extrude this in. Okay, this should be good. Let's bring this down a little bit. Okay, now let's create an empty sphere and move this up. Scale this up a little bit. Let's grab all these leaflets and parent it to the empty. Let's check this. Okay, fine. Now let's parent the empty to the pot. Okay, everything is looking good. I would like to slightly reduce the size of this pot. So maybe tab into edit mode. Let's grab the bottom portion. Press G, Z, and move this slightly up like this. Yeah, this seems fine now. So before moving on to the shading part, we're gonna have to make sure that this is actually in the right size, by meaning that I'm just trying to model this as close to the real life scale. So right now this is like half a meter, so this is unrealistic scale. So let's scale this down until you see 0.09 meters in the Z. We have parented all these plants and the empty to the pot, so scaling down this will do. So make sure that you scale down to 0.09 meters in the Z. So yeah, something like this. Yeah, 0.095 seems good. Now I'm just going to bring this back over here. Press period key on your numpad to close in a little bit. Okay, now press Ctrl A and apply the scale for the pot. Click and drag and select all these leaflets and press Ctrl A and apply scale. Okay, we have successfully applied the scale values, but don't worry about the rotation. We still want to retain the local axis like this. So yeah, now let's move on to the shading part. Before that, I would like to rename these. So let's grab this F2. I'm just going to rename this to pot. Yeah. Now let's create a new material for this one. And let's name this pot. Now let's grab one of the leaflet. And let's create a new material for the leaflet. I'm just going to name this leaf. Now click and drag and select all these leaves. Deselect the pot and the empty. Now press Ctrl L and choose link materials. So this will link the newly created materials to all these leaflets like this. Okay. Now I would like to go over here and click and drag to create a new workspace. Let's change this to shader editor. Press N to close in the side panel. Let's zoom in a little bit. Now I would like to clean up the left side viewport as well. So press T to close in the toolbar, press N to close in the side panel, and Control tilde to close in the gizmos. Let's also turn off the overlays as well so that we have a clear viewport. Okay guys, now let's switch the 3D viewport to render preview so that we can work with the shader in real time. And as you can see, we don't have any light source in our scene, so everything is dark. So let's quickly set up a simple world lighting. So go to the world properties over here and click this yellow dot, and let's change this to environment texture. And I'm just going to open HDRI. Okay, let's grab this one, Peppermint Power Plant. So this one is from Polyhaven. I will provide you a link so that you can download the same HDRI. So the reason why we are choosing this is because it provides a really nice and neutral lighting, so which is great for working with shaders, so that we don't have any type of influence over our color of our shader. Now the background seems a bit distracting, so I would like to hide this. So for that, I'm just going to go to the render properties over here. So scroll down, and under the film option, you can check the transparent. So this will hide the HDRI. Okay, now everything is set. Hey guys, a quick announcement. Before jumping onto the shading process, I would like to let you know that this succulent plant is just a small fragment of a bigger kitchen scene that I'm producing into an extensive course. If you are someone who is interested in creating such detailed scenes, you want to learn so many things about modeling, lighting, rendering, and compositing inside Blender, let me know in the comment section. Also, there will be a link in the description where you can answer a couple of questions, which will let me know your thoughts and requests that will in turn make this course a lot better. I'll be more than happy to take on your suggestions. Okay, now let's get back to the shading part. Now let's start with creating the material for our leaf. So grab any one of the leaf, press Shift D and Z, move this up, and press Alt R to reset the rotation and rotate it, and so that it points upwards like this. Now I'm just going to press / to enter the local space with this selected leaf. So this is just to help us visualize the shader, because all the other leaves, they are rotated in a certain direction. So with this, we can see what we are actually working with. Okay, now I'm thinking about creating a very simple gradient material, and using the pointiness value in the geometry node, we can add a different color on the edges and the tip of the leaf on top of our base gradient shader, and we can finally finish this off with some subsurface effect. Okay, let's start by creating the gradient. So there are multiple ways we can create gradient in Blender. In our case, we are going to use a separate XYZ node. So I'm just going to crunch this viewport a little bit so that we have more space to work with the shader here. Okay, let's bring in a separate XYZ, Shift A. Okay, let's grab one. Okay, now press Control Shift and click on this to preview this node. So this feature is enabled using the Node Wrangler add-on. If you haven't enabled it, go to Edit, Preference, and go to Add-ons and search for Node Wrangler. So make sure that you have enabled this add-on. This comes with Blender. So right now, if you try to move this around the values, you might see a little bit difference in the shader. But to have a bit more control over this shader, we're gonna have to bring in a couple more nodes. So one is texture coordinate. So go to input, let's add a texture coordinate. Let's press Shift A, let's go to vector, and let's add a mapping node. So connect the object to vector and vector to vector here. And you can see the gradient is running in the x-axis right now. And that is because the x value is connected to the surface. You can hold your Control Shift and click a couple of times to switch this to Z. So right now you can see the gradient is running from the bottom to the top. And if you want, you can move this using the Z location. We want the gradient to have a little bit of a contrast so that we can land on a perfect value. So I'm just gonna make some room here, and let's bring in a color ramp. Let's drop over here, and you can use these color stops to define the gradient. And you can also use the Z location here to define the location of the gradient here. So I guess 0.25 seems good for me, and I'm just going to use the color stops here to somewhere around here seems good. You can hold your Shift key while moving these stops to move this a bit more precise and controlled. Okay, so this is going to be our base gradient, and let's move this over here. So right now these are black and white values. I would like to add some colors to this. So for that, I'm going to bring in another color ramp so that we have a bit more control over the color as well. So Shift A, let's add a color ramp, and let's drop this over here. You can either give your own colors or follow the hex code on the screen to have the same color as me. So I'm just going to give this a really nice green color. So I have decided to give two different hues of green. Maybe we could move these color stops a bit closer to make this a bit more contrast like this. Yeah, so we have successfully created our gradient. So let's move this over here. So now we have to create the edge mask. So for this, we are going to need a couple of nodes. So one is geometry node. So I'm just gonna type in geometry, and another one is color ramp. So I'm just gonna borrow this one, grab this Shift T and move this over here, and press backspace here to reset the color ramp. Let's plug the pointiness to the factor of this color ramp and press Control Shift and click on this to preview this. Again, you gotta have to play with these color stops to find a sweet spot. Okay, I guess this is looking good. Maybe we could crunch down the blacks a bit more and the white as well. Yeah, I guess this seems good. So right now the translation seems a bit harsh. So you can change the interpolation from linear to B-spline. So this will give us more spectrum of colors between the dark and white values, but you gotta have to crunch this in a really close so that you have a bit more contrasted look. Yeah, I think this is looking good. Yeah, in case if you don't like the result in the end, we can always come back and adjust this later on. Okay, now we gotta have to bring in a mixed color node so that we can mix these two sets of nodes. So press Shift A, let's bring in a mixed color. Just gonna drop this right here. So this set of nodes, so this is going to act as a mask that decides which portion of the leaf is gonna get green color and which portion is gonna get the edge color. So this anything that you create in the place of a mask that goes into the factor. So let's plug this into the factor. And by default, even though the both input of mixed color shows white, the first value always represents the black values and the second values represents the white values. So right now, most of our leaf is going to be green. So we are going to plug this into the first value here. And I'm just going to move this over here. And for the second value, I'm just going to pick a really nice saturated red. So let's type in some hex code here. Okay, now let's press Control Shift and click on this mix node to preview this. So as you can see, we have nice red on the edge and most of our leaf is green. Maybe we could decrease the green a little bit by dragging the black color stop on this one. Yeah, this seems good. Maybe that's a bit too much. Yeah, this seems fine. Okay, now let's plug the result into the base color and hold your Control Shift and click on the Principal BSDF to preview the actual shader. Okay, this is looking good. Let's adjust the roughness a little bit. I want this to have a bit more of a matte finish type of look. So I'm just going to increase the roughness to 0.6. But if you like, you could also dial down the roughness to have a really nice and shiny look depending upon what type of stylization that you are aiming for. But I'm just gonna go with 0.6 here. Okay, this seems good. Okay, now let's adjust the subsurface value here. So I'm just going to use the random walk, which is perfectly fine for this type of leaves and stuff. So let's increase the weight all the way to 1. As soon as I increase the subsurface value, we can see the light is kind of interacting with the insides of our leaf. So like this. So right now the red value is dominating because you can see the radius represents the red, green and blue channels in color. So right now the red is dominating. So I'm just going to dial down the red and make this a really nice green. So let's type in 0.2 for the red and 0.3 for the green and 0.1 for the blue will do. So to visualize this a bit more clearly, I'm just going to bring in a RGB color node. So press Shift A and let's bring in RGB. Okay, let's click this color over here. Let's go to the RGB channel. I'm just going to type in 0.2 on the red and 0.3 on the green and 0.1 on the blue. So this is the color that we are using in the radius. So please watch closely. I'm just going to plug this into the radius and there isn't any changes happening. But if I change the color, you can see it is actually changing. So all these values in the radius is actually representing the red, green and blue channels in the RGB color. So if you want to visualize this correctly, you can always use a RGB node like this. Okay, so the subsurface value is set. I'm just gonna arrange this a little bit. Okay, as a final touch, we can use a layer weight node to have a little bit of a matte and a coated type of finish onto this. So this is completely optional. If you don't like this, you can skip this one. So let's bring in a layer weight node, press Shift A, layer weight, and hold your Control Shift and click a couple of times to preview the facing. So this is gonna act as a mask for us. If you like the funnel effect, you can also use that as well, but I'm just gonna use the facing here. Let's move this out. And to mix this, we are gonna use another mix node. So press Shift A, mix color node to be precise, and drop this onto this here in this noodle. Let's make a bit more room here. And this is gonna act as a mask. So I'm just going to grab this and plug this into the factor of this mix node. And we already are feeding our mixed color into this color A. Now all we have to do is, let's change this color to something like green, like this. Now Control Shift click on top of this to preview this. So this is before and this is after. Now we can also preview the shader here. So this is how it looks with the layer weight, and this is how it looks without the layer weight. It kind of adds a little bit of a coating. Maybe we could try something like blue or something else, you know. Yeah, with this we can preview this a bit more clearly. Yeah, this is completely optional. Okay, I'm just gonna go back with the green one. Yeah. Okay, now press / to exit the local space, and let's take a look at all these leaves now. Okay, this is looking good. Okay, folks, we don't need this leaf anymore, so I'm just gonna delete this. And this is the final node setup of our leaf. Let's move on to the next one, which is, let's quickly create a color for the mud here. So I'm just gonna grab this pot, go to the solid mode, press Ctrl Alt Z to enable the overlays, tab into edit mode. I'm just going to go to the face mode. Let's select the middle face here, and let's create a new material. This is going to be very simple one, just a diffuse brown material. I'm just gonna call this mud, and let's choose a really nice brown color for this, like this, and click assign. So this will assign this material to this face. Now let's switch back to object mode. Let's switch to render preview once again, and let's turn off the overlays. Yeah, we have the mud. Maybe we could increase the value a little bit. That's a bit too much. Yeah, this seems good. Okay, let's create a material for the pot now. I have planned to create a very simple stripe pattern that fades up as it comes to the top. So let's see how we can create that. So we already have a gradient material created for this leaf here. So we are gonna repurpose that. So let's grab the leaf and let's go to the shader node tree here. I'm just gonna grab all these here that will help us create the gradient. Right click and choose copy. Now let's select the pot, and let's press Ctrl V to paste this. Now press Ctrl Shift and click on here to preview the gradient. Now let's see how we can create a stripe pattern. So we are going to use a wave texture for that. Press Shift A. Let's type in wave. I'm just gonna grab this wave texture here. Press Ctrl Shift and click on this to preview the wave. So right now this wave is actually happening in the x-axis. So let's switch the wave texture from X to Z. So this is what we want. And let's add another color ramp. So let's borrow this one. Press Shift D. Let's drop onto this. We have already adjusted the color ramp, so it kind of increases the contrast. So previously it was like this, and right now this is looking like this. So this is what we need. We can work with this. And right now you can see this is perfectly straight. I don't like that. So I'm just gonna increase the distortion value in the wave just a bit, like this, to make this a bit more wobbly looking. And also I want the bottom to be perfectly dark. So which is, in case if you feel, in case if you have a white bottom, you can always use the face offset, which moves the wave texture in the z-axis or in any axis that is flowing. grab our object coordinator and plug it into the vector. And we gotta have to increase the scale now to compensate that. I find 57.3 seems good. Let's adjust the phase offset a little bit. Yeah, this seems good. Maybe let's decrease the distortion a little bit. Yeah, this seems good. I'm just gonna adjust the color ramp a little bit so that both of these color have same amount of width, nearly maybe, and we gotta have to mix them together to bring our pattern. So as long as you are working with just black and white values, you can use a math node to combine them, which uses a much less computing power pairing to the mixed color node. So let's bring in a math node, press Shift A. Let's bring in a math node. I'm just going to drop this over here. So by default, it comes with the add value, but what we need is a multiply value. So let's set this to multiply because we want to keep all the black values from both of these setup. So let's press Control Shift and click onto this to preview that. So right now the setup is working just fine, except it is actually showing the opposite of what I really want. So I want this wave texture to happen in the black area, and I want this to fade as it goes, as it reaches the leaf. And we can achieve that effect by flipping the gradient. Click on this arrow and let's choose flip color ramp. Now we gotta have to adjust this color stop so that we can achieve that effect. Yeah. Now we gotta define the color for this black and white values. So I'm just gonna make some room here. You can either use a mixed color node, plug this mask into the factor and use color 1 and color to define the colors, or you can use another color ramp. Just gonna shift deduplicate this, backspace to reset the color ramp. Let's drop onto this noodle and let's move this a bit away. And I'm just going to use a really nice blue color for this stripes, and you can use your own color if you wish to. So I want the white values to be blue, so I'm just going to click on this white color stop. And okay, now we want this black values to be white, so I'm just going to click the black color stop and let's move this all the way over here. So a quick tip, whenever you are trying to add white color to the any type of material, don't go all the way to 1. So let's stop somewhere around 0.67 or 8, something like this. Now let's plug this into our base color and Control Shift click on our principal BSTF to preview the shader. Bring these blue values closer to the white, something like this. Maybe we could adjust the gradient mask a little bit. Yeah, this seems fine. So I want the bottom to be completely blue, so I'm just going to adjust the face offset a little bit. Yeah, this seems fine. You can hold your shift key and right click and drag to create a reroute, and you can move this using G like this. So one more final effect is if you want your ceramic pot to look a bit more glazed looking, you can decrease the roughness all the way down to something like 0.14 or something. Or you can go to the coat option and there will be a weight slider here. You can slide this all the way to 1, which in turn adds a coating effect like this. And with the tint color, you can control the color of the coating. Always try to use a very small value because it is a bit extreme. Just going to give this a bit of yellow tint like this. Okay, so this is our final setup. Okay, fine. Now let's see how we can do some basic lighting so that we can render this out. So we don't need this shader editor anymore. So I'm just gonna click and drag and let's close this over here. And let's bring our overlays. So let's set up a camera quickly. Press Shift A, go to camera, let's add a camera. You can press 0 on your numpad to enter the camera view. Okay, let me just find a really nice angle of this plant. Yeah, this seems good. Now press Ctrl Alt 0 to align your camera to the viewport like this. You can press G to move your camera. And I want this to have a really big focal length. So let's set this to something like 130 and press G and Z twice to zoom out while selecting the camera. Okay, let's start with the lighting. We already have a really good base lighting that is provided by the HDRI. We are going to add a good rim light and a nice fill light from this side. So let's start by adding the rim light. Press Shift A, go to light. Let's add a area light. Let's go to the light properties. I'm just going to give this a really nice and warm color like this. And let's set the shape to disk. Why not? And I want this to come from this angle. So I'm just going to press R a couple of times to enter the trackball rotation. And let's rotate this like this and move this out. Okay, I'm just going to switch the pivot point to 3D cursor, press R, Z, and rotate this light. So after some fiddling around, I have landed with these two lights. So I have slightly zoomed in the camera a little bit. We're still using the same focal length. Okay, let's check our rim light here. So the power is set to 7 and the size is set to 1. It is kind of intersecting from this angle, which is pretty much opposite where our camera is facing. This is a really nice and big rim light. Let's enter the camera view and let's take a look here. Okay, and this one, let's change this to disk. This kind of adds a really slight fill light. That's all. That is for the lighting. There is nothing much going on here. Okay, the rim light might strike us a bit too strong, but trust me, once we render this out, it will turn out just fine. Okay, now let's go over the render settings quickly. I usually have some pre-built render settings, so let me just go through that. So if you have a GPU, let's set this to GPU compute for faster rendering. So the noise threshold is set to default value. I have set the maximum samples to 300, and that is because we are using quite a bit of subsurface values on our leaves. So subsurface value is quite easily prone to noisy image. So using a bit more high samples than usual will give us a really nice and crisp render. And let's go to the light path. So whenever I try to render still images or really simple scene, I just set this to full global illumination, which turn on all these to 32. We are not using any volumetrics, so we can turn this down to 0. Let's leave everything else as 32. We don't really need to worry much about that. And let's go to the color management. I usually use filmic, and the look is set to high contrast. Maybe we could dial this down just a touch. I think high contrast seems just fine. So that's all that for the render settings. Let's go over for the resolution, which is set to 3000 by 3000, which is a bit too high. So I'm just gonna dial this down to 2000. Now let's switch the viewport to solid mode and let's press F12 to render our scene. Okay, our plant has been rendered out. I think this is looking really nice. So if you want to save this as a PNG, you can go to image and save as and save your image. So yeah, if you like this video, consider giving a thumbs up and subscribe the channel for more future content like this. And if you have any suggestions or feedback, which is very welcome, please do leave them in the comment section. I'll try my best to answer them all. And yeah, that's all for this video, and I'll see you on the next one.